Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining us today. I'm here with the co-founder of ErgoPad, and his name is Marty. Welcome, Marty.
Hey, everyone.
So as usual now, I have a brief paragraph to preface the conversation so people are aware what ErgoPad is. ErgoPad is a project incubator offering token IDOs, initial decentralized offerings, which provide funding for new projects within the Ergo ecosystem. ErgoPad released its own native token through an IDO as well, and users are now able to stake that token, named ErgoPad tokens, through smart contracts on-chain. ErgoPad fundamentally was created to generate financial backing for the developers who need it, so we can help the Ergo platform grow in a safe, accessible financial ecosystem where everyone has fair access. Right off the bat, most Launchpad projects built in the DeFi space only limit themselves to offering IDOs. But you guys, as I understand it, also do marketing. You offer marketing support and also blockchain development support for those DApp projects that need it.
Yeah, so we really are focusing on IDOs right now. Our developer team is very tied up with the Paideia project, which we feel is kind of like a preliminary necessary project to have at least MVP, so we can manage all the DAOs that we launch through our platform. So yeah, we're definitely focused on IDOs, and if you were to launch a project and do an IDO through ErgoPad, we'd offer marketing support as part of that package. So that's kind of how it goes right now. In terms of helping developers build, we're offering, like, for example, Blitz, the trading card game upcoming on Ergo, is going to be using our, we've got a WebSockets platform that they're going to use to query the blockchain and make sure that you have the cards that you're trying to play the game with. So we do offer like additional blockchain as a service services, like, you know, in that sense. So, and there's more to come as well, such as contract auditing.
Oh, great. So when was ErgoPad originally conceptualized? Why did you feel like this was a project worth creating? And when was it officially launched?
I guess I got into Ergo probably around last June or July, kind of around the second Ergo hack, maybe a little earlier than that. And I found, I saw this great layer 0 and layer 1 blockchain with all these like amazing features, a real iteration on Bitcoin, not just another altcoin, that really took smart contracts and some of the basic functions to the next level, like with Schnorr proofs and Nepo POWs and things like that. So I saw that and I saw the potential, and Charles Hoskinson was really talking it up, like on the Lex Friedman podcast. And I was like, okay, yeah, this seems great, but there's not much going on in the ecosystem. The wallets are not very robust. DeFi is not very active. There's no staking. There's all kinds of things that we need in order to compete with things like Binance Smart Chain, which is a more centralized version of Ethereum. And, it's like, if somebody's looking for a UTXO based proof of work blockchain with DeFi, where are they going to look? They're going to see Ergo as really their only option. So I was like, okay, let's build it. Let's make this functionality exist on the Ergo blockchain. So when people see the potential, they can also see that, like, how they can take advantage of it. So around December of last year of 2021, we decided to start launching ErgoPad and get some funds for development of the ecosystem. So, we've come a long way since then in a few short months.
Do you have, now that you mention it, any motivation for building on here? You mentioned particularly that you felt that Ergo was a superior blockchain to launch a project like this on. I felt like that as well when I came across Ergo, that, okay, now we have the best of all possible worlds imaginable. And basically, another way of phrasing this question, what is your experience with other blockchains that kind of set the catalyst create that catalyst for you to come into Ergo and say, well, we have to create this. I'm motivated to do so because of the shortcomings of X blockchain? Or, what was it that kind of drove you or attracted you to Ergo particularly?
Mm-hmm. I mean, what first attracted me to blockchain in general, probably almost a decade ago now, is that it's like, we don't like the traditional banking system. We don't like traditional finance and the way that a few people have so much control over the entire globe's marketplace. So here's Bitcoin, which came along and said, here's a different way where the monetary system is predetermined. Nobody can manipulate it. You remove the human element from the monetary system and allow it to be predictable, and everyone knows the rules and everyone participates in it. And nobody gets to say this group of people cannot participate because, they're from a country that we don't like or whatever. Like, all those things were incredible philosophies. And then I think it was I think Ripple started mentioning smart contracts, and Ethereum created the first smart contracts on the blockchain. And they were like, hey, we can do so much more with this. We don't just have to send money to each other. So Bitcoin's great for like remittance and store of value. But then Ethereum's like, well, we can do DeFi, we can do this, we can do that. But they use the accounting model, which anyone who used Ethereum as it got very popular realized gas fees are extremely prohibitive. One of the advantages of crypto over traditional finance is like, if you want to send money to you're in let's say a Western country and you have family back in a country you immigrated from and you want to send money, you don't have to pay $20 for Western Union to send that money. You can just use Bitcoin, assuming you can get the money on and off the blockchain. I mean, once everyone's using it, you won't need to get it off. But
right.
That was like, it was supposed to be cheaper, right? Cheaper and easier. And then you're using Ethereum and the gas fees are like $180 to do a transfer with like DeFi. It's like, okay, this is too much. This is not really a solution. We may as well
Right.
go back to the bank, right? So
yeah, a lot of people begin in that regard. It feels like you're introduced to Ethereum first, then you see all of the problems that Ethereum has, and then you're trying to develop zero knowledge rollups and other things in order to not only compete with Ethereum, but because people are also genuinely frustrated by a lot of the shortcomings there. Although they did the best they could at that time with the knowledge that they had,
Ethereum, I mean, Ethereum did an amazing job. Like, look how much the ecosystem grew because of Ethereum. Without Ethereum, we probably wouldn't be where we are today. So, it's incredible. It's a great proof of concept. And then it's like, if you design it around an accounting model that creates this gas fee issue, it's like, okay, you can't just backtrack that. You'd have to launch a new network, right? So here we are with Ergo. It's like, okay, we saw how Ethereum did these A, B, and C very well and had a couple issues. So let's go back to the original. Let's go back to Bitcoin and say, okay, well, Bitcoin does these things well. UTXO is great. But DeFi is amazing, but the accounting model maybe isn't the best way. So let's combine the two. Let's do EUTXO. Let's improve certain things like, Schnorr proofs, I believe, is an iteration on Bitcoin's base, their base encryption model, which gives you more functionality like ring signatures and various other improvements. So it's like, let's iterate, let's actually make it better, while sticking to the traditional and the original concepts that we like so much, which is, fair access and decentralization and some of the things that proof of work offers to us.
Right.
So
I find a lot of parallels between sort of your thinking as you journey between from the beginning with Bitcoin, kind of the simplest one to understand, right? And then you go on to what comes directly after that. I think directly after Bitcoin, you have a lot of hard forks and a lot of strange things just trying to copy the open source code. But once you get to the next major milestone, you see like, that's great. We're able to have programmable functionality, like if it was JavaScript, on the blockchain. And then you get into those barriers, not because you have a tribalistic preference towards Ergo necessarily, but because at least for me, it felt like, your confidence and conviction in Ergo is emboldened by the fact that we're all just trying to make DeFi and just push the new internet of money so far, and we just want the best platform in order to do that. It has nothing to do with, I'm part of the Sheep Army or some other thing, or we're maximalists about Ergo. It's just we just want to see things get better and fair as well, because that's the other thing that I'm sure you would agree with, that once you get all these Ethereum clones in a way that are more centralizing, they do proof of stake already, and then they can't keep their networks up all the time, or they just collapse overnight because the founders had not a great stable coin, and
or
then you
malicious
start
intent.
and malicious intent.
They're
Well, look,
like, hey, look at this beautiful thing you can do, while they're funneling funds off. But
yeah. So
it happens, right? I mean,
yes, the weird thing is like that I feel like that's the new problem. So we can overcome Ethereum shortcomings, but most of the time, if you're building something to compete with Ethereum, you're cutting corners as well, because it's just easier. Yeah, usually, yeah, not always. But then Ergo is trying to get the best of both of those concepts together, and then also improve on it. So when you came into this ecosystem, do you feel, were there any other projects that you would have considered doing with your other co-founder other than ErgoPad that you felt like at the time was also very necessary?
For Ergo?
Yeah.
I think that ErgoPad was just a we knew that we couldn't do it all. And so we wanted the platform where others could come and build things that they're good at building. So that's kind of it's like, okay, and then I was like in a progression. I was like, okay, if we do that, then these projects that want to build things that we're not good at building, or we don't have the resources to build, they can start going that direction, and then we can focus over here. Like, for example, with Paideia, I was like, okay, every project that IDOs through ErgoPad is going to be a DAO, but nobody has a way to manage that yet. There's no on-chain voting built. Even in Ethereum, it exists, but it's not the functions are not extensive. It exists on other blockchains as well, but there's concerns: is the network going to stay up, or are the validators selected by a central party? So I was like, okay, well, we can build that, and then everyone can use it. And then now once we have Paideia to MVP, then we can do the next thing. What's the next thing? What that people need, right? I think I may have veered off your question, but yeah, no, we didn't. We just wanted to do things in sort of order of what do we need first, and then where do we go from here now. So we're kind of in the middle of that plan with ErgoPad and Paideia.
I think a lot of people in the Ergo community, myself included, they look at what you're doing and they wish they could emulate sort of filling those cracks of necessity for a healthy blockchain to just sort of have the basic building blocks so people can come in and build. What you're doing is more of literally a launch pad, so others can come in and just fast track their way into being completely manifested within the ecosystem, and having sort of like uniform rules and just infrastructure in place so they can do it, whether it's a DAO or whether they're just trying to get funding for their own DApp. What is, if you don't mind me asking, what is your background, or not only your background, but also your co-founder's background in sort of tech, where you were able to have the idea of what you wanted to build on Ergo and then actually be able to manifest it? Because I feel like a lot of people in our community, they want to build as well, but they're not finally attuned with programming or understanding how to build things on blockchain properly.
Well, we were fortunate in that early on, we were able to hire some extremely good devs. I do most of the front end. I'm capable of doing some back end, but it's not my specialty. Leif is like an incredible sysadmin, and he knows database he must have been doing it for 2 decades. and databases are a big part of how we query the blockchain. I mean, the Explorer, he's been refactoring some of the database there. And then we got Louis Vatra, he knows smart contracts quite well. He built our staking contract. And we've got full stack developers such as Noob 777, the guy is just like a wizard, right? Like, I mean, I'll be like, hey, can you add this or build this CMS for us, or can you do this? And then 2 days later, it's done. I mean, it would have taken me a month to write, So we are very fortunate in that we're surrounded by very strong developers. We've brought also LGD, who's done Guap Swap, is now working with us as well. The team is just kicking off, so we were fortunate in the time when we first raised funding for ErgoPad. We raised a very good amount to where we were able to bring on these excellent devs, but that doesn't mean that other people can't do the same thing as what we do. If you have a good idea, you could IDO through ErgoPad, or you could raise funds in various other ways. You could create a sub pool. You could use the liquidity farming tool that ErgoDex is launching in Q3. There's various other ways, right? And in addition to that, while we're working, we're building tools that other people can use. So our team has built Python tools. So before we started, you kind of had to learn Scala to work with the Ergo blockchain. There wasn't a lot, there's now Sigma Rust, and there's AppKit and things like that. But we've built Python tools. So what you can do is you can run our backend, and you can then run PyTest and view, how your smart contract is going to behave with a Python backend. There's also, just from the recent Ergo hack, there's DAppStep, which is now you can run your smart contract to see all the inputs, all the outputs, and simulate that. So as we go, all these tools are getting built. The wallets are getting better. Nautilus is much better than when we started. We only had Yoroi. Nautilus is growing every day. They've got GraphQL now, and all these things are coming, right? So every day it gets easier for new developers. So I urge you guys, come on our Discord channel too, and you can speak to our devs directly if you're having trouble. If you want to launch our backend and test with Python, if that's your specialty, come and try it out. I mean, there's so many opportunities now, and we'll help out too.
Yeah. No, I think
Was that too?
No. I need a moment, in real time to absorb sometimes. The magnitude of what you're doing is helping to grow the ecosystem, I think, long term, almost as much as, some of the core dev team members of Ergo, the people that work on the actual mobile wallet, or, I think the impact and significance, while it is still early on, the fact that you're offering this framework for people to go, it makes the barrier of intimidation a lot lower as well. You go onto the website ergopad.io, and everything is just very easy to navigate and look at. And I think that's really important, like people making very complex things simpler, because it's just like, not everybody could be Louis Vatra, right? But if Louis Vatra could come in and build something and then make it open source and then allow other people to piggyback off of that, that's how we're really going to get Ergo off the ground and into a different, tier of exposure, and just having superior tooling where it's not so broad in general, but people have gone in and narrowed it down for specific things that people want to use, because you guys already did it once, or another project might do it. You mentioned ErgoDex briefly. I'm going to go a bit out of order of the questions I have prepared. So tell me more about ErgoPad's newly formalized relationship with ErgoDex. As two of the most significant projects, in my opinion, being built on Ergo, what made you both want to pursue further cooperation? And what is the extent of that cooperation?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because this partnership really came together because ErgoDex and ErgoPad kind of go hand in hand. I don't think that we could exist without them, because all the IDOs we launch go straight to the the ErgoDex. And the other thing is that they have, not to mention the yield farming that's coming up in Q3, which is an opportunity for people to increase the yield, increase the liquidity on their tokens. I'll get to that. I'll provide more details on that in a sec. But the beauty of this partnership is that ErgoDex has access to VC funding, and ErgoPad has access to community funding. And if a project wants to use one or the other, that's fine. They can come to us for community funding. They can go to ErgoDex for VC funding. But if a project wants to do a hybrid of both, then this is an incredible opportunity now that we've partnered up, and that somebody can say, you know, I don't know if the community has the financial support for my project at this time. Maybe the market's not as good as I want it to be, but you know, I think I need X amount of dollars. Now you can just come and apply for the accelerator program between the two of our platforms, and you can say, I'd like to raise some money from the community and work with the community and build a DAO. I'd also like to talk to VCs and maybe bump up my the treasury so that we can really build what we want to build. Maybe you know, maybe you need so much to get to MVP, and then you think you can carry on using the revenue generated from the project. But you know, let's get you there with all the tools we have. So, you know, it's just a great opportunity for projects that want to build on Ergo. And I'll speak to the yield farming. If you currently IDO through ErgoPad, without yield farming, you have to provide both sides of a trading pair. So let's say you want to provide 100,000 in tokens, 100,000 USD in tokens on the DEX. You also need 100,000 USD in Ergo, which is a bit of a barrier, right? So you need to have those funds or raise those funds. Otherwise, who's going to add the liquidity? You can't just throw one side of the trading pair on the DEX. Whereas with the yield farming program, it's like you put aside 100,000 USD worth of tokens for the yield farming payouts, and then somebody could mint a liquidity pair and stake it on the yield farming platform and receive your tokens that way. So it encourages people to mint liquidity pairs. So not only do they get the liquidity pairs payout, the percentage of the trading fees, they also now get your token as the liquidity farm. So that's coming up Q3. That's going to be huge for the Ergo ecosystem. That was really big. PancakeSwap does that. I think Uniswap and various other DEXs on other blockchains, but this will be the first time Ergo has it. So this is huge for DeFi. You'll increase total value locked and opportunities for projects and users alike.
Hey, talking about how Binance Smart Chain has this functionality for quite a while now. We also see a lot of scams on Binance Smart Chain. How do you believe, I know this would be probably more for the ErgoDex team, but in your opinion, how do you think Ergo can best avoid certain situations where, you know, we do have ErDoge and we have other ones, but it's obvious that these aren't meant to be serious projects. But how do we avoid scams using these types of, you know, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So how do you think in the future, when inevitably Ergo becomes bigger than just a community of a few thousand people that are active online, how could we do that? How could we avoid people playing with the numbers in a malevolent way in order to enrich themselves and rug pull or things like that? I know ErgoDex has an anti-rug pull mechanism, so that's why I'm saying, like, maybe this question is more for them, but based on your experience, what do you think could be done?
They do have that liquidity locking feature, which is one way that you can ensure that a project is living up to its promise of, you know, locked liquidity for X amount of time. You know, this might be an outlandish idea, but I think that it's important for users to educate themselves on the economics of how blockchain projects work, because, you know, a lot of these scams stem from the fact that people are willing to throw their money at something that if you look a little bit closely, you can see uh, how easy it is for them to scam you, and how, you know, people putting money into honeypot currencies like that. What was it called? The one based on that Korean TV show.
Squid.
Token, was it Squid Games? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah. It went down
Where
immediately after. Yeah.
only the founder could sell. And it was built into the smart contract. And that went out there and people still bought it. Um, I hate to say I
So
told you so, but like, you know,
yeah,
do your own research, you
yeah,
know, look into the economics of the project. If some, I mean, and I have to be honest, like, you know, ErgoPad's APY is quite high. It's very high, right? But it was sort of set up because knowing that it's a 3-year emission schedule, it's going to go down over time. So with a linear distribution, it was quite high in the beginning, and it will be much lower later. But that's liquid. Pardon me. Uh, that's shoot. It's diluting the currency, right? Every day there's a
yeah,
certain amount released, which dilutes the currency, and there's more every day. So the value sort of declines. As if you don't have new buyers, then the value goes down in a way, like based on how much is being emitted. Like every currency, Cardano has the 5% per year, which is quite conservative and very good. The higher the APY, like you get these projects with 1,000%, 2,000%. You got to be careful. If you see 1,000% APY, be cautious. If you trust the team and you believe that they're going to create value to the point where people are going to keep investing in that project, then that's a good sign, right? But if you have 1,000 APY, that's a red flag. So be cautious, is what I'm trying to say. You know, assess the team, be aware of what their goals are, be aware of what mechanism they have in place. PancakeSwap again is another high APY. I think they're around 93% on average, but they also have a significant burning mechanism, you know, and they have the lottery, and they have various mechanisms that prevent that dilution from completely destroying the value. So I think being aware of how those economics work is just what my suggestion to the community. Um, what are you getting into? Who are these people? You know, do your own research. A lot of what Ergo talks about is KYA, which is know your assumptions. Be aware of the project you're getting into, and why they've chosen the economics, the tokenomics they have.
yeah. Okay, I'm gonna put you in the hot seat for a moment there. About what you mentioned, right? A 5% return on an investment in the real world would be seen, just like as Cardano's APY is, as a tremendous success. You get 5% on your investment, even over, you know, that's what treasury bonds are, right? You get a very low
Yeah,
yield, but it's guaranteed. Um, it kind of feels like, and I'm not specifically saying ErgoPad in any way falls into this category, but a lot of DeFi protocols, they implement burning, they implement such and such and such and such, and they promise things. It kind of feels like we're our own little Federal Reserve when we do these things. A lot of these protocols, we are tampering with the total supply in order to get every individual token to be of certain value. And there's a pressure that people expect a certain amount back. And it has to be a ridiculous amount because they're assuming a ridiculous amount of risk, at least in their head, because they don't understand how staking mechanisms work and the contracts and things like that. Now, you know, people that are pure proof of work people, which is funny because we're talking about a launch pad that I don't think would be feasible if there wasn't proof of stake, if there wasn't any sort of vesting period, making sure everybody keeps everything for a certain amount of time. It's really hard to generate funds unless you directly, invest into a project and, you kind of do like a Shark Tank approach. I'll get 30% of your project, I'll give you 100,000 SIG USD. A pure proof of work purist would say that, you know, what ErgoPad is doing is sort of like manufacturing money out of thin air, right? So going from there, what do you have to say about those types of concepts when, you know, you're promising 120% back? It is a finite supply, which is good, and you guys are obviously holding up promises, and ultimately I don't think you guys don't have in your pie chart any sort of ErgoPad tokens for yourself directly, right? Am I right in saying that?
Well, the pie chart was on the tokenomics page. With the pie chart was initial, so at IDO date. But if you go into the white paper, there's a table that shows the entire emissions. But we have the founders and the initial developers who were with us in the beginning, and everyone's received some ErgoPad tokens from the treasury. But we haven't been doing any more lately because we ended up staking all the tokens from the treasury to try and reduce the APY.
Okay, and what is the allocation of the treasury? If you don't mind me asking.
24 million ErgoPad tokens were given to the treasury.
Out of a total of 420?
300, is it? Honestly, we changed it right before we launched, so sometimes I'll just look it up exactly.
Okay, so
but it's in the white paper. Yeah. So there's a total of 400 million ErgoPad tokens.
Okay, so a relatively small sum. So what do you think about you know, not just launch pads, the overall DeFi industry when we do staking, and maybe it's not done responsibly like ErgoPad, you know, seeks to do it. Do you think yield aggregators kind of corrupt some of the fundamentals sometimes of what cryptocurrencies are meant to do? Originally, like with Bitcoin, when we're talking about fixed supplies and we're talking about hard money versus burning and some of these other, you know, kind of Federal Reserve type measures like raising interest rates, you know, to cool down the economy, and then lowering interest rates. So when people go out and buy a house, they'll be more willing to do so. Do you have any thoughts on that? I don't have a clear answer for this because it's a case by case scenario, you know, at the end of the day. But I just thought that you'd be the right person to have this discussion with, since you have a staking incubator built on top of a proof of work cryptocurrency that's arguably probably the hardest one and most solid since Bitcoin itself. So
yeah, it's a good question, and one thing to mention is the MO of Bitcoin is fixed monetary supply that isn't manipulated or changed. It's something that everyone agrees upon in the beginning, and it follows that based on an algorithm throughout the entire time Bitcoin exists. Whereas the US Fed alters the rules and can print money whenever they feel like it and do so, which, as we see today, you know, they printed, I think it was trillions. I mean, the speed at which they were printing money was unprecedented in 2020, 21, to try and maintain an economy that was being broken by supply chain issues and COVID. But eventually you have to pay the piper. Like, you can't just kick the can down the road forever. Eventually somebody has to raise interest, pull the economy into reality, right? Whereas with crypto, what we're saying is we're gonna just predetermine this, and we're gonna set the rules in place, and we're not gonna deviate from those rules, and that's gonna be set with algorithms. And everyone can predict where that's going to go. And if there's a supply chain, if let's say crypto was backing the global economy, if there's a supply chain issue, rather than manipulating the money supply, we go, what do we need to do to fix the supply chain issues? We're not, I mean, and I'm not an economist, so like maybe this is an oversimplification, but let's be honest, like, why does one person at the US Fed have so much power over the entire globe? And why can what he says cause, you know, 100 million people to have to default on their mortgages. Can't we find a way in which we agree on the rules and there's algorithms in place that try and maintain, let's say, 2% inflation? I mean, we know deflation is bad for the economy, and we know extreme inflation or hyperinflation is bad for the economy. So why are we letting one person say, okay, we're just going to print $1 trillion today? I mean, it doesn't work for Venezuela. Why would it work for the US? They're just bigger.
I mean, you bring up a lot of good arguments that I think a lot of people are thinking about here in the United States. In Canada, especially, there is this cost of living that has gone up over the last few decades that hasn't kept up with wage growth and things that we in the US are now understanding objectively, like this is a problem that's not sustainable. If you look at the value of homes in Canada, in the main cities, it becomes so unaffordable that most people have to live like an hour away outside of Toronto to commute and come into the city because foreign investors, the lack of building, and just overall special interests have said, hey, instead of building more single family homes, maybe we should just build up a new condominium in downtown Toronto and just make it so that you'll never own it. We'll just rent it out indefinitely. And year after year, we'll also increase the rent. And whoever doesn't like it could get out and we'll just get new people in. I'm saying all of that to say that you're right. If the rules aren't fixed to some degree, it's almost impossible that out of the goodness of people's heart and power, that they'll just magically do the responsible thing, even if it goes against their own interests. Because politics becomes something that at an extreme takes it takes the individual out of the equation. It becomes a system. Whereas even if you have
hope.
the best of it, even if you have the best of intentions, things are propped up in a certain way that if you don't play it by the rules and if you don't act according to what would be in your best interest or the interests of people that influence you in that high level of power, it's basically you have no chance of surviving politically. And yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying is accurate. And I mean, for me personally, that's why I feel these conversations are more relevant than most that people are having in everyday society. Because here in crypto, at least we're starting from a premise of what is money and who gets to make the rules. Nobody here in the United States voted for all of these trillions of dollars to be flooded into the economy. If you have unemployment, if you want unemployment benefits, if you are having a hard time and you need sort of certain social programs, there is at least some sort of application that you fill out in order for people to make the case that they need this. And it's a case by case thing. But unilaterally, when you flood the markets and then you're in this top position and you come back and you apologize because inflation exceeded your forecast, is really irresponsible. And at the end of the day, there is no accountability for that. And it continues to go on. So I'm sure you would agree, one of the reasons that we're in crypto in the first place, or even in Ergo, is because we see the perversion of this in both of our countries. And we're relatively young and we can see that it's not getting any better over time. Correct?
It's hard to make a statement about that. I mean, I'm not in control of these things, but I think that, there's certain issues, systemic issues that are perpetuating these problems. Like if government officials can take bribes in the form of lobbying, then their best interest is going to be whoever the highest bidder is. And if you build an entire country around that premise, then there's going to be people who are left behind whose interests are not taken into account. This is the interesting thing about crypto, is that we are having an opportunity to experiment with new ways of doing things. And that's where DAOs come into play. It's like, can we figure out a way to do governance which is more fair, where all people's, influence is taken into account? Can we make it transparent enough where There's not one person pulling the strings who gets to manipulate this. And a lot of that corruption bleeds into crypto, as we talked about before. I mean, there's so many projects where there is no accountability and nobody's, I mean, it's bad in crypto and it's bad outside of crypto. But like you said, with Ergo, we're trying our best to do this in a way that's fair, decentralized, and we're going to just keep experimenting and try and figure out interesting ways to solve these problems. So I think that, you speak about the real estate market. Those problems stem from the way the rules are put into place. You said there's not enough density, and that boils down to NIMBYism and local governments, and there's not enough building, and that stems from it's too expensive to get the supplies, or the people who could be influencing that are not incentivized to do so, because right now, if they can kill the housing market, then corporations can buy up more houses, and it becomes a perpetual renting situation. It's like, does anyone really want that except the people who have money? I don't want to rent my whole life. I want the opportunity to be able to buy property. So we're just going to keep trying to figure that out on blockchain, and maybe that'll bleed into the society at large.
I think piggybacking off of what you said, with the real estate in Canada, what I see is that you have several very, very few principal cities. You just have them. They're all southern, usually, except for Edmonton and like Quebec. You have Vancouver for that province. Done. Major city. No other ones. Here in the US, you'll have go to Texas, you'll have San Antonio, you'll have Austin, you'll have Dallas, Houston. You have that one city that's primary. Then you'll have I wouldn't be able to tell you every single province. Well, you're
not.
What about no? But what about Saskatchewan? What about Alberta? I'm thinking Calgary, Edmonton.
Nobody goes there because they want to.
Okay, fair enough. So,
I mean, I'm being rude. Those countries have their beauty, pardon me. Those provinces and those cities have their beauty, right? But they also have 10 months of winter. So they're not for everybody.
Sure.
For the mild climate, you need to be right on the border, like you said. And you need to kind of be near the coasts. It's tough, but
so even more to your point, you're dissuaded from going to places like I can't remember all of them, but you get the point that Manitoba is what I'm thinking of, like that province. You're dissuaded from going there because it's such a harsh climate. So even more people spread out to the coastlines, like you said, to Toronto or to Vancouver, and that makes it very easy, just like we have in San Francisco, for local politicians to kind of control the housing market. And in San Francisco, you're not allowed to build more. You're just not allowed to. So if you try to build affordable housing and try to kind of dilute the supply of housing and available options, that is frowned upon. And it keeps everything so high where, you could work, now it's common to say you work 2 jobs. I work 2 jobs. And, you're hustling. But you're working 2 jobs so you can afford the cost of living, to afford the cost of living that maybe a previous generation would only have to work 1 job and still have plenty of time to live a normal life. It feels like, and this is all opinionated, right? But from my point of view, it feels like almost like you're on a Titanic. I know it's pessimistic, but I call it how I see it. I feel like we're on the Titanic and we're just on the higher floors or whatever of the suites. The water's below us, and now like the old couple in Titanic, now we have to stand on the bed and we have to put our heads up to the ceiling and just hold on for breath, for dear life, for as long as you can. And that's why I'm in this industry. I could care less about trying to get a return on my investment. I could care less. It's about the technology and pioneering a new way of doing things. And it's not coming from an angry anarchist point of view. It's coming from a necessity, a necessary point of view that, you know what, Bitcoin doesn't have any inherent value. none of these tokenized cryptos do.
Does the US dollar?
Wait, besides the fact that people find them more attractive than the US dollar, another thing, because the rules are fair. And that's more than enough. That gives Bitcoin its value. That gives Ergo its value.
Yeah, value depends on, value
consensus.
is based on whether or not people want to use it, right? US dollar has value right now, I think, because they made it the global standard for how they price oil, right?
Yes.
Money has value because people are willing to use it and people are able to use it. So
yeah, it's a social consensus mechanism.
Exactly.
where if everybody agrees we'll use it, therefore it has more prominence and importance and value. And I guess from the Bitcoin maximalists would agree with that, although I think the tech is so limiting that you're just going to need so many layer twos and things like that. You could just move on to, keep Bitcoin doing what it does as a storage of value, and have Ergo be more of a flexible jack of all trades, where you can actually build out the things that would otherwise be, over encumbered with the problems of Ethereum, or over encumbered with problems of centralization with Solana. That's why I'm here. Like, it's not about the name. It's not about, I'm going to 100x an investment. It's just like, this is the best platform right now in order to push the boundaries of what's possible with finance in the real world. When you can mint NFTs for a few cents, that's incredible power. Like, you can use that for so many more things other than artwork that it would boggle the mind right now if I were to put them all down. Titles, for real estate, supply chains, which a lot of people are exploring, like VeChain and things like that. Daniel Friedman, right here on Ergo, building Zengate. Why are you able to build even conceptualize a commercial enterprise built around Ergos? Because the tools are there. So yeah, I know we kind of sidetracked from the original questions of ErgoPad. But hey, one of my questions was, I'll preface it very quickly. There's currently a bit of a cultural war in our industry as it pertains to proof of work consensus layers versus proof of stake layers. Some may feel that proof of stake is kind of like a Ponzi scheme, and others actually say that proof of work is just flat out environmentally irresponsible and wasteful of energy. Being that ErgoPad, it uses a lot of proof of stake concepts on top of a proof of work layer, platform. What are your opinions about these kind of arguments? Are they actually helpful or constructive, or destructive for our industry?
I think it's constructive to have these talks, but I think that there's a lot of tribalism in these conversations, to where somebody's decided that, I'm a Cardano person, I won't hear it, or vice versa, right? However, I think there's room for both consensus mechanisms. I think that proof of stake can be an excellent consensus mechanism when done well with good research, like ADA does. And I think it can be a terrible one when somebody controls the validators and they can just say, hey, we're taking the network down. I mean, that's not crypto. That's not what we're here for. I think it's nice to see. It's nice to see that Charles Hoskinson influenced all the good work that they did for ADA and created such a fantastic proof of stake network, which works very well. But I think that proof of stake does not do all the things that proof of work does that I want to see from a cryptocurrency at all times. I think that ADA is excellent. I use ADA. I hold some, and I think it's wonderful, right? And I would love to expand Paideia and other projects to the ADA blockchain. But one thing I like about proof of work is the fact that you don't need to buy it from somebody else. So you can generate your own currency by mining it, which means you never have to use a centralized exchange in order to get Ergo.
Right.
So unless you know somebody who has ADA who will sell it to you, you cannot get it. There's no way to get it because it's only created by holding it. which is fine. And there's enough people out there who are willing to sell it to you. It's just an interesting mechanism that proof of work has. The second thing I like about proof of work is the market externalities that come from the fact that you need to have mining to generate the new currency, which means that there's somebody has to go out and buy the hardware. So they've spent money in an ecosystem to buy that hardware. And then they have to take that hardware and they have to run it. So now they have maintenance costs. They have to pay to power it. They have to pay, if they don't do it themselves, they have to pay staff to maintain it. They have to host it in a facility. All these things are economic expenditures that actually create value in the currency that you're mining. So Ergo has that right as a base. The cost of mining new Ergo is providing a real value to Ergo as a commodity. On a proof of stake currency, you just have to have it and then you get more. So you buy it, you put it in a magic box, and you look inside every now and then, and there's more in there. If that worked for gold, there'd be no value. I mean, the value comes from the fact that more people, there's more buyers than there are sellers. And that's true of Ergo in a lot of respects as well. But by creating those market externalities, then you create that that restriction on the supply side that limits, the value that limits what miners are willing to sell it for. Because if it costs them $1 to mine one erg, they're probably not going to sell one erg for less than $1. It gives you that base value,
Right.
which I find very interesting.
No, that is very interesting. It's kind of like labor in general. If you prostitute yourself and say, hey, I'm willing to work for less money than what the market says it's worth, my work is probably not a great example. But, if you worked at a diner for $8.50 an hour, God bless you, because with inflation, we know that's not $8.50. That $8.50 isn't $8.50 anymore. But if you work at one diner for $8.50 and you work at another diner later on for $8.50, you think twice because of the labor you put into that job when you use that money for something else. So you are transacting with that money. You're selling, in a way, your money, your buying power to obtain another good. And that comes just the way you generate the money. It has a connotation to responsibility that's a bit stronger than just getting an interest back on something that you staked, just because you didn't have to work for that. You didn't have to really think about it from, your overhead costs of electricity and hardware. And the fact that you have like some crazy LED light thing in the corner of a room somewhere making noise, and you have to the burden of trying to explain that to people. What are you doing with that? And then also, if you're willing to have the conviction to make a mining rig, chances are you're more confident in the fact that proof of work and that cryptocurrency that you're mining will be around long term. Otherwise, you wouldn't have gone through all the trouble, because you're not going to play 5 versions of Call of Duty on 5 different computers at one time. So, you have the burden of selling the hardware if you give up on the conviction that this is worth your time. There's just a lot more invested in there. And then, from a hard money perspective, I always say, have said in many interviews so far, that money is generated from producing some sort of labor, a good or service. You provide something, and that's what backs it. And somebody's willing to give you a placeholder for the energy you exerted for producing this good or service. And without proof of work, you kind of warp it to where, I think Cardano does the best possible job, and they've obviously researched everything so well that they're trying their best to make this proof of stake ecosystem and the best possible and champion it and all that. But nothing is perfect. Proof of work, once you scale it to a certain point, we see with Bitcoin, it gets ridiculous how many miners you need and things like that. So, but at least you have those fundamentals there. As long as you're willing to put in the work, you will receive something, a good, an asset for the service you're providing the network. And we see that, at scale, once mining becomes more and more expensive, to the credit of Bitcoin maximalists, there are many, many reasons why you should mine Bitcoin at scale. For example, if you have a relatively unreliable power grid, or there's something called, in California, it's very notable, everybody that lives there knows it, there's peak hours of electrical usage, and they
especially
charge you
with
more
solar and wind.
Yeah, so there is a lifespan on the energy you produce, and as you take it through different from the power plant, and you take it to all of these little substations, and as you transfer it through wires, you're actually losing a bit of that potential energy right then and there, just through delivery costs. And that's more on the electrical engineering side, but there is a cost to producing electricity, not using it. And with Bitcoin mining, when you have those off hours, that you're able to actually internationally park that energy towards something that will give you an asset digitally. So you're able to move electricity across borders in terms of the value you get for that electricity without any wires whatsoever.
That's a great point.
Yeah, it's a really incredible macroeconomic way of looking at Bitcoin mining. But it wouldn't have been possible if Bitcoin didn't get to the ridiculous scale that it finally did, with warehouses full of these angry miners buzzing and creating crazy heat. So I think there's pros and cons. I think the narrative around proof of stake just being more environmentally friendly, that's valid, but it's lacking the labor involved into producing an asset, which is why this space exists in the first place. It comes from a proof of work background.
People may not like this statement. I don't know if everyone will agree with this, but I think that a decentralized global economy is worth the energy expenditure. If you don't like spending energy on something that has utility, then why do you spend energy watching TV? There's a lot of things we spend energy on that are frivolous. And I mean, if you drive your car to go watch football, how can you say we shouldn't spend energy mining Bitcoin when it's a global economic system that has utility? You know what I mean? And whatever, right? Maybe they don't find they find there's no value in Bitcoin, or the argument could be made if you can do it without spending energy, like with proof of stake, why not do it? But there is a third reason why I like proof of work cryptocurrency, is that you can fair launch it. With proof of stake, you mint the currency you only distribute it to people who already hold it. And so in order to have that mechanism in place, somebody has to hold it first. Who gets it first, right? There's no fair launch. There's zero ways to fair launch a proof of stake cryptocurrency. You can get it kind of fair. I mean, you could hold a lottery, maybe, I don't know, but with proof of work, you can mine it. Like with Ergo, I think it's 4% is distributed to the Ergo Foundation, and the rest is mined. And that's 100% fair launch in my opinion. I mean, I like that the Ergo Foundation exists and keeps building. But if 95% of the coins are mined, that's global distribution, and that's 100% fair in my opinion. And you can't, that's, actually it's interesting. Ethereum is shifting from proof of work to proof of stake, because that kind of makes it a fair launched proof of stake cryptocurrency in a way, which is kind of interesting.
Oh yeah, that could be a pro of transitioning, because you came from a background of proof of work. I think the integrity of Ethereum is being challenged with doing that, abandoning an entire ecosystem of miners and things like that, because public discourse said, this is not the best way to do it, or they feel that because they can't solve gas fees, because they started from a very difficult position to scale. Now they think this is their cop out.
They can come here. they can
Yeah.
join us at Ergo. They don't need to stick with Ethereum. We got everything Ethereum does, and we can probably do it better now.
I think long term, Ethereum will be a case study of how important it is to have a reliable ecosystem that actually cares about the people that sustain it from the ground up. Um, I think when you see crypto punks, and I don't want to say that one in particular actually, because there's something about being the first ridiculous generative collection that gets to that valuation that probably has some staying power to it, ironically enough. But a lot of the things that people used ETH for between 2020 and 2022 was usually on nonsense that arguably doesn't hold up the test of time as well. If we go onto OpenSea and we just get all of these collections, as soon as crypto goes downhill, it's speculative, but I find it very hard to believe people just want profile pictures of these random 8-bit characters, and that's going to just somehow maintain its value at 100 grand or 250 grand. And I don't think celebrities promoting such generative collections also has staying power, because if you can just constantly produce it and it's not unique enough, there's no reason why you can't continuously dilute the amount of NFTs available in profile pictures until we've all kind of leveled the playing field, and now the majority of them won't be worth anything long term. And I that's my opinion, of course. But going back to Ethereum, I think it is a poor choice to just change how you do everything from a consensus point of view, and also that has nothing to do with the problems of a network layer as well. These are two separate things: how you maintain your networks and how you produce consensus around how new tokens are introduced to the circulating supply. These are two separate things, and that's why they keep delaying it as well, in my opinion, because they're realizing the ideas that they want to implement are so grand, coming from a position where we already have these existing infrastructure, that to switch over is going to be tremendously difficult. And I think they're going to lose a lot of people along the way. And I'm a big fan of Ethereum in terms of what they produce for the space, but I think they won't be in the top 10 forever, actually. So
let's welcome these people and give them the tools they need. Like there's
right.
there's a lot of developers. There's a huge ecosystem built around Ethereum, and I hope they're starting to look at Ergo now. So yeah, let's do what we can to encourage them to come over here and do their
Yeah.
crazy NFT things here and bring hundreds of thousands onto the ecosystem.
At least there's a contract there about, we'll be around, and
Yeah.
we'll be building on the first principles. We're not going to change them for something else. So Marty, could you explain the mechanics of how IDOs actually work, and what are the multiple advantages of conducting an IDO for a new project, in terms of the benefits the team stand to gain from that IDO?
Sure. So an IDO is kind of it's how we kind of crowdsource some funding to initiate a DAO. The whole purpose is to say to the community, like, we're going to create this DAO. You're going to have an opportunity to be a part of it. In contributing to the DAO treasury, you're saying, I want this project to get built. I want to be a part of the decision-making process in terms of voting. And, I think it's a valuable thing for the ecosystem. So essentially what we do is we do some pre-funding rounds before the IDO actually goes live on ErgoDex. So through ErgoPad, actually, if you have ErgoPad tokens and you stake them on the platform and reach a certain tier, it gives you an opportunity to get in earlier at a lower contribution rate. So the people who stake ErgoPad are the ones that are saying, yeah, I really want to be part of the DAOs you guys launch. And that's what sort of holding ErgoPad is. It's a statement of your intent to participate in these IDOs. And it gives it gets you in early. So you essentially become the VC in a sense, as a community. And you also become a board member, and you also, actually participate in the creation of these projects. Uh, you're not just throwing your money at something and hoping the team builds it. Like, you're actually going to be there and you're going to be helping. These are open source projects, and you can even contribute code if you're interested. Um, and so that's really our MO, and that's what we're trying to do, is engage the community and, as a group, build the Ergo ecosystem.
What is the vetting process for new project applications? What are the metrics for determining as well how much funding a project needs versus another? Is that determined by the project creators that want to launch that IDO?
It's kind of a little bit of both. I'll have my opinions based on what we've done in the past and based on where the market is today. Uh, and then the team will decide whether they agree or not, and they may ask for more. They may be totally willing to follow our guidelines. It's tough because we've had changing market conditions recently.
Right.
Everyone's feeling the pinch, right? And we don't want to just go away. We're going to keep building everything that we're building, uh, and we want to keep building the Ergo ecosystem. So we really had to adjust from some significant asks down to some much lower asks, and hopefully the community sees that we're doing our best to adjust and be fair and that kind of thing.
And how about the vetting process for new project applications? Are there enough projects for you to seriously consider vetting them out, or is it more of a decentralized, anybody can really have a fair shot of launching the IDO? Because I know these questions are sort of tricky. But yeah, is there some sort of vetting process or?
We sort of assess it as a case by case basis. Sometimes, like recently, I approached Swamp Audio through the Ergo Hack. Part of the reason we wanted to sponsor the Ergo Hack was because we wanted to maybe have some projects come on board through our IDO process. Other projects have approached us. We have an application form on the website. There was one project that we decided not to go with because we felt they were more of like just a cash grab. They had a Telegram that was full of users that were just like to the moon and posting GIFs of, like all this kind of crap, right? Like that's the type of thing you don't want to see in a serious crypto project. They've now launched on Binance, and it exists, right? I mean, it's not a bad project. Maybe they are going to build what they said they're going to build, but we're looking for more serious projects, people who have some kind of presence in the community. I mean, Curbside Profit with Azorus, when we decided to do their IDO, he had already worked with us. We had already paid him to do write some code for us, some spreadsheet code that was building tokenomics and building charts for us. And he had already had a presence in the community. Same with ErgoLand. Chris Ray had a strong presence in the community. So a lot of the vetting process is like, who are they? What do they want to build? How does their GitHub look? What have they done already? Have they wrote some code already? Are they just in it to create it to make a quick buck? Like, are they paying for fake bots to come in their Telegram and blow it up and pretend like they're a big deal? But so we're trying to be different. We're trying to be the change that we want to see, which is not a pump and dump hype machine, but really we're looking for good, strong projects that actually want to build the ecosystem. So that's where we approach it from in terms of
Yeah, I feel I'm getting a few parallel sentiments to Sky Harbor as well, because there is this responsibility that when people interact with the infrastructure you've laid out, you have to make a decision call that is going to be on a lot of visual aids. For example, judging sentiment of the community on a Telegram, or what the digital footprint of the so-called creators of that project. What have they done in the past with their actions? And it's kind of a tricky situation, because if something does go wrong, ultimately the ones that created the infrastructure, hopefully not, but they're the ones that are looked at as like, oh my God, like, how could you let this happen, since you allowed, there's a know your assumptions and things like that. But over time, it becomes tricky as infrastructure providers, or in Sky Harbor's case, as NFT collection verifiers, to be open enough where you don't become gatekeepers, but be serious enough where you're going to have to make judgment calls on projects that just don't meet the bill for whatever reason. And those sacrifices ultimately are best for image, for consumer confidence, but also to show that, everybody has a fair shot, as long as they're willing to put in fair amount of work into it, and prove that and provide substantial evidence for that. It's tricky. It's very tricky.
We'd like to extend to the community, much more say in that process, and we're going to do that as we build Paideia. They will have a vote. They will, and in addition, these projects, when they do an IDO, their treasury will go into a DAO smart contract, so they won't just be able to take the money and run. The DAO will get to choose. We're going to spend 10,000 here hiring a dev for this contract. We're going to spend 20 here and have a 3-month thing, and these are the milestones we want to reach. And there'll be a vote, and people will participate in that process.
Yeah, well, you pretty much answered my following question about if there were any methods to guarantee that a project that successfully launches with ErgoPad, that they actually use the capital raised properly and towards the actual growth of the project post IDO, versus just keeping the money. So I suppose Paideia will help to address a lot of that by in terms of accountability. You speak a lot about Paideia. Are you, is it safe to say you are also the co-founder of that project as well?
Yeah, actually the whole ErgoPad team, and in addition, we've brought on some other contractors to build that one. So the UX, the designer, and we've also got a front end dev building the DApp itself. I'm doing the landing page and stuff like that. He's doing the DApp. So we've in addition to the whole ErgoPad team being on it, building the smart contracts in the back end, we've also brought on some contractors. Once the MVP is live, we're going to put that on to the platform. So ErgoPad will be a DAO and Paideia will be a DAO on the platform, where votes are tracked, with smart contracts 100%. So it's very exciting. Can't wait for that.
It kind of feels like the more projects like ErgoDex, ErgoPad, Paideia, the more that those types of projects launch in general, regardless of who's doing it, it feels like they're so necessary that they almost need to intertwine with one another in order to work properly, like completely. You talked about liquidity farming with ErgoDex, how Paideia can hold projects that launch IDOs accountable, right? There can be a DAO that holds those projects accountable for how they allocate funds, and more transparency between those that choose to have ErgoPad tokens staked, and how projects use those funds with the capital that they raise. Do stakers somehow elect which projects they'd personally like to fund, or is it all one big pool for ErgoPad to manage responsibly themselves until Paideia becomes operational?
No, everyone chooses what they're interested in. There's no restriction on what you have to or don't have to involve yourself in. I think it's good to leave it open and let each person decide what they're comfortable with at that time, and that's what we're going to stick with for sure.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. What are some of the cool projects for people that don't know that have already launched with ErgoPad? And do you think they could have launched at all properly if ErgoPad didn't exist beforehand?
I
Those
think
are
that,
two questions. I tend to give
yeah,
two questions at once, and it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of difficult to answer both at once. But yeah,
anyone could have done it on their own, but I mean, before we built the tools to, the contribution has a smart contract behind it. The vesting keys have smart contracts behind them. Staking has smart contract. And the website that we have actually has quite a bit of functionality that didn't exist before, including taking people's whitelist and determining whether or not they're staking ErgoPad and things like that. I mean, the backend that we have in place is quite extensive. When we first started, it was like you had to send the funds were going to just a wallet address, and then it was all trust based. Now it's all smart contract based. And that's where we're going to get with Paideia as well, right? So they could have done it. Definitely they could have done it, but we've done a ton of work to facilitate it. And it just takes, if I'm developing a project that's supposed to, like, well, let's say ErgoLend, they want to loan people funds and they want to build their project. They don't want to figure out how to do an IDO. So we just take that difficulty completely out of the picture and just handle that side of it.
and the first question was, what exciting projects have come out already out of ErgoPad that you're happy and proud of helping to facilitate their launch pad into the Ergo ecosystem?
So far we've done let's see, we did Paideia first. We did Ergo Games, which is cool. They've got their own game for Ergo. It's their NFTs. They're making a new game called Monster Pub Brawl. So they're bringing like the fun side of it to Ergo. I mean, we need gaming and things like that. This is what people are interested in when it comes to DeFi, is play to earn games and NFTs. So they've got that. They're working on that. I think they're turning ErgoGames.io into a gaming launchpad of their own. So that's super interesting. And then we have ErgoLend, which is doing really cool things. I mean, they're on the ground in Kenya, and they're working to bring uncollateralized lending to developing nations and to the unbanked of the world. So people who could never get a loan in traditional finance can use the ErgoLend platform. So, their goals are to really grow people, they're really grow ecosystems in parts of the globe that are not going to do it without a little bit of help, I don't think. But they deserve it, So ErgoLend is out there trying to help these people maybe just fund a store that they want to open, or some kind of small business to build their local communities up. So it's a great project, and I urge you guys to look into that one.
Yeah, I'll try to get Chris Ray on as well
Yeah.
to talk more about that.
And now we're doing
Uh,
Swamp Audio. Swamp
yeah, could
Audio
you
is super cool.
talk a bit more about that? I've heard snippets of what they're trying to do. I think it's importing music with full copyrights onto the blockchain. But could you share what you have so far? Maybe I'll get them all on down the line if they want as well. So
Yeah, nobody could talk about it better than the team themselves for sure. But they're basically they want to take on DRM. They want to take on copyright laws and basically do a decentralized version of things like Spotify and YouTube, where the gatekeepers are saying you only get 10 cents per play or 1 cent per play, and then the label gets 90% of that, and the artist gets 10% of that, for example. I don't know the exact numbers, but there's definitely funds being funneled away from the artists and given to like these multi-billion dollar platforms are facilitating only big artists to be successful, and the smaller artists definitely are not getting as big a piece of the pie as they should be. And so Swamp Audio is taking blockchain as a tool to facilitate that for artists, and trying to remove the middle people from the process as much as possible. So it's super interesting. Come take a look. Their IDO is running right now, so you still have a chance if you watch this when it just comes out. So I don't know when this goes live, but
You're actually up this Saturday.
perfect. Okay.
I'm trying to I don't want the Ergo community feel kind of like I'm not covering enough Ergo things, right? So I've decided to kind of sandwich between an Ergo based interview with external blockchain interviews and just kind of
Nice.
do one Ergo next guest speaker, Ergo again, kind of like a peanut butter and jelly, make sure that we're giving Ergo those that are building on Ergo, not preferential treatment, but make sure that it's spaced out fairly so we don't just get all of these amazing external blockchains in a row and then just get, ErgoPad and then go back to the same thing. So just want some sort of uniformity. I felt that that would be helpful going forward.
Cool.
So you'll be up this Saturday, even though I have a
That's enough
backlog
time.
of other videos, other
Yeah.
interviews to get through. But for transparency's sake, I gotta pace them out appropriately. So yeah,
So
I think what you're doing here is I kind of feel bad that I took this long to get you or ErgoDex on because I think these types of projects are core. They're as important, like I said before, to the things that the core team is doing with Ergo. I think it's as important as EIP 27 or anything that Alex can produce, because ultimately you're coming from a point of view of you're a community member and you're building something so other community members can build on top of that. And that can have an amazing compounding effect down the line where we look back at this interview, maybe your beard is a bit longer and also a bit whiter due to stress and other things. And we can say, hey, look, these people took the initiative early on, and that made all the difference for the early days of Ergo, So, yeah, on behalf of the community, I'm sure everybody would like to say thank you for taking the initiative and building something so essential where where there was nothing before, so
we wouldn't be
filling up
here
that
without the
vacuum.
community too. So they're
Yes,
the
yes,
MVP here. Yeah, we wouldn't
right.
be doing any of this without them. I mean, we'd be trying. It would just be a lot slower and wouldn't be able to get Louis working full time on smart contracts. But
Yeah, I think it's an incredible thing here with Ergo, the resiliency of the community. I don't see most people ever talking about price because it's ultimately driven by utility. And it's beautiful to see so many people working on Ergo, not really stopping at all just because the markets are down or the markets are up, because that's pretty much how it should be. And I think long term, I think we're all going to be better because we're starting from that enthusiastic, let's keep building, let's support each other as we're building. And in your case, and your team's case with ErgoPad, literally building so other people can build as well quicker. And that's a great thing. So, like you said, yeah, the community is like the blood that runs through the body of
that's right.
ErgoPad.
That's right.
Without the community, you just be a dead body. Nobody would want to participate in these IDOs. Nobody would care to do anything if they are not enthusiastic about supplying that blood flow as well. Um, now that I've gone through my questions, I'm gonna do something dramatic. I'm just gonna rip the sheet in front of everybody for fun. Where do you see yourself being down the line over the next few years? Where do you see Ergo being in your opinion?
And I hope we just keep building. I hope that, we've got a decent amount of runway right now. And I hope that as the community grows and as people start coming to Ergo, we start seeing exponential growth. I mean, let's get through this bear market. Let's get back to a bull market as soon as possible. And then we can really grow. I don't know. We're just going to keep doing what we're doing. We're not going to change a thing, and we'll keep building right through. And then as the people come to use it, we'll just keep improving the front end side of things so that it's super easy. I mean, ideally, what I see blockchain looking like is something where people don't even have to know that they're using blockchain. So if we can build tools where, I mean, there's no confusion, there's no difficulty, there's no learning curve. It's just you install an app and you're using blockchain, and you don't have to worry about somebody manipulating your money supply, and everyone in the globe can use it every day in their day-to-day lives. That's where we got to get to. So that's the end goal. We'll just keep building till we get there.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I've mentioned this many times. I feel like we're in the early days of the internet, and we're trying to convince people to send an email versus using the post office for once, and seeing how much
Yeah.
how greater this would be. Look, you don't have to put stamps on it. And people are just like, we've always done it this way. I know I'll get the letter there. How do you know? What if the power goes out? What if I can't check my email? How do I know that they're not stealing my credit card information when I buy remember those infomercials where you would
Well,
be like 1-800 call now, and maybe send a payment online to such and such address, and the integrity wasn't there. I mean, the consumer confidence wasn't there. And I kind of feel like DeFi has all of this amazing potential, and it will be uncovered by the masses, and we'll have sort of this singularity where, just like you use your iPhone or Android device, you download an app, you don't really care how it was coded or programmed, you're just interested in the end result, which is using it for the things it was intended to do, that hopefully make your life easier. And that will be more than enough. And once we get to that point, I think that's when we're going to see mass adoption of not just Ergo, but just cryptocurrencies in general. But in the meantime, you kind of have to weed out the protocols that will also fall in a bear market. And I think that's kind of like, an amazing opportunity to also build under the radar, not be distracted by price. And that's where the real hustlers will come out and build the code, and join new communities. I think with Ethereum doing what they're doing, I think a lot of soul searching will be there from miners. And I'm pretty confident that a lot of that hash rate will come to Ergo, just because after your portfolio gets killed enough times as a retail investor or as a miner, you start to hopefully long-term look for something that has real staying power. And that contract between the platform and you, in a completely decentralized manner, will not be interrupted whatsoever. And that ultimately helps to improve DeFi over time, although there's a lot of blood in between that. I want to thank you so much for joining us on this episode. And everyone, please check out ErgoPad.io. Check out the community overall and the projects that are being launched with ErgoPad. And stay tuned for Paideia. How do you pronounce it properly?
I say Paideia. It's a Greek word. But check out Paideia.im as well. The website has sort of semi-launched, so go take a look.
Perfect.
And we'll keep going.
Yeah. So again, thank you so much, and thank you for building on Ergo. And everyone, what other helpful resources would you recommend for people interested on building here on Ergo? Are there any off the top of your head that maybe I'll add to the description?
I mentioned DAppStep. DAppStep built a really cool tool for checking smart contracts and seeing the inputs and outputs. Check out our backend. You can, if you write code in Python, you can run PyTest to test your smart contracts. Look into GraphQL, Ergo GraphQL from Nautilus. That's a good one to improve your access to the database, the Explorer database. There's a lot going on. It's hard to think off the top of my head. There's always stuff coming. Check out the recent Ergo hack. There's a lot of cool stuff coming through from the recent Ergo hack. There was lots of great applicants. So, and thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak to everyone.
Thank you.
Times are changing so quickly, so it's nice to have an update for the community. So
Yeah, no, thank you. It is mutually beneficial. And yeah, that's pretty much it for now. Thank you guys for watching as well. And if you like the content, I don't usually say this, but please try to share it. Let other people know about what is actually going on in the ecosystem. And it doesn't matter if they're not from Ergo. Like I feel like a lot of times, like you mentioned, we're very tribalistic with our blockchains. Like as long as even if it's a foreign D app or some sort of innovation in the space, in general, we should all try to champion those types of initiatives and share them and just show that the space is just growing overall. I think that
That's
would be
right.
the most important thing. Forget
Yeah.
about, oh, such and such is only building here. We're better than you. We're all going to have different ideas of what we think DeFi should look like in the future. And all of our uh, motivations actually will may differ a lot. We see that with thousands of cryptocurrencies in this space, we're not going to get uniformity around what we should build. But the things that do push things forward and are serious, we should always try to celebrate them, regardless of where they come from and what chain they come from. So, yeah, thank you
That's a
so
good
much,
message.
guys.
Yeah. Thanks for watching.
See ya. See you in the next one. Bye.
Ciao.